I'm pregnant. Mark's wife, Mary, announced her pregnancy suddenly, and Mark's eyes widened, unable to hide his shock. Oh my, so I'll finally get to see a grandchild's face. Mom looked delighted, covering her mouth with her hands. Mary, after flashing a smile towards the two of them, turned to me with a cold gaze, looking down at me. Oh, and Kim, since you'll just be in the way, could you please leave soon? For the first time, Mary boldly directed her spiteful words at me right in front of Mom and Mark. I wondered what Mom and Mark were thinking. I glanced over at them, but both looked oddly calm. I see. These two have been brainwashed by Mary. Realizing this, tears started welling up. Then, the next moment, Mary, that's enough. Her words left me in disbelief. My name is Kim, and I'm 42 years old. There was a time when I dreamed of marriage too. It's been 20 years since I graduated college, and I've been working for an international trading company. After starting my career and living on my own, there were times when the loneliness made me seriously consider marriage, but I never quite found anyone to go all the way with. The first guy a friend introduced me to said, "I just quit my part-time job today. I'm going to keep playing in my band and become a famous singer." He wasn't planning on settling into a stable job. At first, I supported his dreams, but every date, I ended up paying for everything. Eventually, "I'm not working." "Okay, you make better money anyway." With him brazenly demanding I support him, I ended up throwing water in his face and walking out. After that, I went to other social gatherings, but every man I met only cared about the name of the company I worked for, asking, "How much do you make? What's your salary?" I grew tired of these types of encounters and gave up on marriage. Everyone seemed to expect me to provide for them, with no thought of earning their own living. It seemed like every time I searched, I'd meet men like that. Maybe it was a sign from above that marriage wasn't for me. So I started thinking a life of single independence and career focus might be better. I could cook whatever I wanted, eat out whenever I pleased, without considering anyone else's needs. Weekends became a time to hang out with friends from college or close coworkers, sometimes traveling together. Ever since I gave up on marriage, I've been enjoying my single life to the fullest. Then, when I was 40, Dad passed away as his illness worsened. Worried about Mom living alone in her old age, I moved back to my parents' home. People might say things about single life, but I don't care. Mom and I have developed a recent hobby of going shopping and traveling together, fully enjoying life. I have a younger brother, Mark, 5 years my junior. His name is Mark. Currently, Mark lives alone, but he doesn't come home for Christmas or any long holidays. When Mom calls him now and then, "I'm doing fine. See ya," he just hangs up right away. I figured him avoiding our home as an adult was a sign of independence, so I didn't mind much. No way. Mark's getting married. One day, out of the blue, Mark called Mom, which was rare. "Mom, I'm getting married. I'll bring my girlfriend over soon to introduce her to you. I'll let you know the exact time later. Anyway, that's all." With that, he hung up the phone. If there was someone nice, you could have let us know. I mean, who's the person that's caught Mark's eye? With Mom beaming with happiness, I couldn't hide my shock, leaving me momentarily speechless. You see, Mark has always been quiet, not one to say much, seemingly uncomfortable around people, preferring to retreat to his room right after school rather than spending time with friends. Even when he lived at our parents' home, he barely spoke during family dinners, and I often found myself wondering what he was thinking, finding him to be a mystery. So I just assumed his girlfriend might be someone quiet, with a mysterious air, just like him. That's what I imagined. Anyway, hi, I'm Mary. The girlfriend Mark brought over, Mary, was nothing like what I had pictured. Her voice was high-pitched, her style bubbly and cute. Seriously, what should I say? I mean, how did Mark choose her? She was the complete opposite of him, with his glasses and reserved personality. And once again, I was left in shock. Well, to each their own. Maybe this is his type after all. I tried to convince myself. Mom didn't seem fazed at all, asking various questions. And Mark answered shyly. Sitting there next to them, I forced a smile, but I was so stunned that I couldn't follow the conversation at all. Then I finally caught something that jolted me back into focus. I've always dreamed of a big family, and I'm totally open to living together after marriage. Mary suddenly announced she wanted to live together with us. What? Living together? What does she mean? Is this a joke? Why? While my mind raced, Mom excitedly supported the idea of Mark and Mary moving in together. That sounds wonderful. I'd be thrilled to have Mark back at home, and a daughter-in-law would brighten up the house. We could do shopping and cooking together. Right, Kim? Yay, sure. Mom was already dreaming of a joyful life with Mark and Mary living with us. But is this okay? They barely know each other, yet they're rushing into this. What if we end up stressing each other out over things like how we season food or our shopping preferences? Even though Mark's getting married and our family's about to grow, I found myself oddly unsettled at the thought of living with Mary. Maybe it's just that her personality clashes with mine, but I can't shake this uneasy feeling. Still, it's not my place to interfere, and I didn't want to ruin the happy mood with my doubts. Well then, we should get a room ready for you too. Oh, and maybe we'll need to plan for an extension once you have kids. Mom, please. Mark nearly spat out his coffee, panicking. Come on, it's a bit early for that. To be honest, I don't want them to live with us. But with Mom's joyful smile and the embarrassed yet happy look on Mark's face, I couldn't say no. I buried my worries deep inside, keeping a smile on my face as best as I could. Once Mom had given her blessing, Mark quickly married Mary. Since it was Mary's idea, they skipped the wedding ceremony and dove right into their new life with us at home. Things were happening so fast, I felt like I was being left behind. Someone like her would typically want a lavish wedding, I would think, but here we are. Was she trying to be considerate of shy Mark? I concluded that might be the reason Mary wanted to live with us, but I was starting to feel that maybe I was missing something. Because, Kim, let me borrow this. Okay, Mary said as she picked up my necklace without even waiting for me to respond. Wait a minute, that's the necklace Dad gave me when I turned 18. It's incredibly special to me. I tried to stop her, but Mary gave me a sly grin. What? But don't you think the design is a bit too cute for you, Kim? You're probably going to stay single forever, so you won't even get a chance to wear something that adorable. Don't worry, I'll make good use of it. See you. Huck forever single. Hey, wait. While I was still dumbfounded, Mary left with my necklace, strutting away like she owned it. After that, Mary started taking my expensive accessories. You're not going to use them anyway, Kim, right? As if they were hers, saying things like, there were pearl and diamond necklaces that had been passed down from my parents and relatives, watches and pens encrusted with Swarovski crystals, gifts from friends and colleagues, or ones I had carefully selected and bought for myself. Each piece held value, not just for its price, but for the memories attached to it. Mary, however, would sneak into my room and take whatever she wanted, ignoring every time I told her to return them. To avoid further theft, I ended up locking all my treasured items in a case. My once cozy, lively room surrounded by things I loved now felt strangely empty. But Mary, likely upset that she couldn't take my things freely anymore, started harassing me out of spite. Can you believe Kim's still living at her parents' house at her age? Maybe it's time you grew up and moved out. Oh, but considering your age, there probably aren't any men left who'd want to marry you. She'd throw sneers like that right in my face, laughing with a look of contempt. Honestly, responding to Mary's low-level insults every time would be endless, and frankly, I was tired of wasting my energy on her. So I decided to ignore her altogether. I told myself to think of her as if she were invisible. Somehow I managed to carry on with our cohabitation. But then one day, a new crisis hit when I came home from work. Why does the room look so tidy? Wait, this can't be happening. I looked around, and all my clothes and bags were gone. Just as I stood there, paralyzed with shock, Mary's voice came from behind me, dripping with sarcasm. Oh, welcome home. I took the liberty of clearing out all your clutter so you could finally learn to live independently. Hold on. You did what? Where are all my clothes and bags? Well, surprisingly, there are people out there who actually want that stuff. So I sold everything. And as a little bonus, I'll be putting the proceeds toward our wedding gift fund. Now you're free and ready to leave the parents' nest anytime. You're welcome, by the way. That day, Mom had been out all day watching a theater performance with her friend and hadn't been home. Unbelievable. She really sold my personal belongings while Mom was out of the house. This is just beyond cruel. Family or not, this is theft. It's a crime. Oh my, Kim, you're scary. But even if I did something like that, who would believe it? Maybe they'd think you're the one getting rid of your own things just to harass me. Or do you have any proof that I did it? This is horrible. All I could do was feel disappointed by the sheer audacity of her actions. But she had just married Mark. Even if I told the truth, would Mark or Mom believe me? Even after living together for a few months, Mary has managed to get along with both Mark and Mom. Am I really the one who has to leave this house? Why should I be the one to go after being treated like this? In the very home I grew up in. It hurts. It hurts so much. Does she really hate me this much? What did I even do? Why does she keep doing this to me? Does she really want me gone that badly? She's taken so many precious things from me. And those clothes and bags were expensive. Wait a second. Has everything Mary taken from me been high-value items? Could that be her whole reason for wanting to move in with us? A chilling thought crossed my mind, and if it were true, the idea terrified me. Does Mark even know much about who Mary really is? Since we started living together, Mark's been away at work most of the time. Just like before, he's quiet even at home, so there's little conversation, and I rarely even see him around. Wait a second. Hasn't Mom been going out to see plays or movies with her friends more often since Mary moved in? I thought it was just because Mary was handling the chores, giving Mom more free time. Mom's usually so warm and outgoing. You'd think she'd want to spend more time with Mary, even doing chores together. Maybe I should talk to Mom about Mary. But then, right when I was thinking that, I think I'm pregnant. Suddenly, Mary gathered the three of us together to make her shocking announcement. What? Really? Mark couldn't hide his surprise. And, oh my, I'll finally get to see a grandchild. Mom covered her mouth in delight. The moment Mary turned from the two of them to face me, her expression changed to a cold, condescending look. By the way, Kim, aren't you already 42? Are you really planning to keep living at your parents' home, single and all? Probably, this child will be the future heir of this house. and an environment suitable for raising a child is essential, right? It wouldn't be good for their education if you stayed here, don't you think? So please, leave soon. Until now, Mary had only been spiteful towards me in private. Now that she had the support of a child, she seemed to feel emboldened enough to throw these mean-spirited words at me in front of Mom and Mark. I wondered what Mom and Mark thought as they watched Mary say this. Uneasy, I looked to Mom and Mark's faces, but both seemed oddly calm. They were already under her influence. So am I the one who has to leave my family, my childhood home? Is she going to take it all away from me? Just thinking about it brought tears to my eyes. Then, suddenly, Mom stood up from her chair and pulled out a booklet from nowhere. She slammed it down on the table. Mary, enough of this. You've been after our inheritance, haven't you? Mom glared sharply at Mary. Mary muttered, "Gah," barely audible, frozen in place. I was so shocked at this unexpected turn that I just stood there, paralyzed. With some effort, I glanced over to the booklet on the table, realizing it was nursing care paperwork and pamphlets for assisted living facilities. Seeing this, my mind began filling with a series of worst-case scenarios. What do you mean? Mom, you've known about this, I asked, and Mom began to explain the details slowly. Ever since Mary moved in, she's been cooking our meals, right? But every single dish she made was overly salty and tasted strange. It was just unbearable. Yes, even though it was that salty, Kim and Mark seemed to eat it without any problem. I thought that was odd. Then Mom stood up again and brought over a bag containing something. What's this? A bag of salt. I looked inside the bag and was stunned. It was filled with dozens of empty salt packets. No way. Does this mean she's been feeding Mom all this salt? Even when I asked Mary, she stayed silent. You thought just because I'm old, I wouldn't notice the taste. I'd pretend to eat slowly, then sneak her food away. Instead, I'd eat meals I made myself, or go out with friends to have a decent meal. It would be one thing if she was only trying to irritate me, but to do this to Mom, too. I was on the verge of losing it, ready to shout at Mary, when Mark raised his voice first. Mary, you weren't just cheating, but you were even messing with Mom. With that, Mark slammed down a divorce application and a thick manila envelope on the table. Out of the envelope spilled photos of Mary with an unknown man. No, why? Mary stammered, frantically trying to hide the photos. You want to ask how I found out? Mark glared at Mary, anger filling his gaze. After we get married, I was out for work one day and happened to see you with a man at the station. At first, I thought it was a mistake, just someone who looked like you. But wanting to know the truth, I hired a private investigator, and every piece of evidence pointed the same way. Your affair was undeniable. I kept quiet because I loved you, Mary, but I've reached my limit, and every piece of evidence pointed the same way. Your affair was undeniable. I kept quiet because I loved you, Mary, but I've reached my limit. Mark, it was the first time I'd ever seen him show this much emotion. He must have truly loved Mary. But if you've forgiven me so far, just give me one more chance. Mark, you were just always so focused on work, and I got a bit lonely, that's all. I won't cheat again, please. Mary was clinging to Mark, desperation in her gaze. I felt something snap inside me. Mary, the man in the photo, he works at that nightclub, right? Did you seriously sell my belongings to give him money, my cherished memories and Dad's keepsakes, to a man like that? Are you kidding me? Give them all back. It was Mark who stopped my hand from lashing out at Mary. "Kim, let me handle this." Mark's intervention snapped me back to reality. "Mark, this single woman scares me. In the end, you're the only one for me. Don't leave me." Mary tried clinging to Mark, but he forcefully pushed her arms away. "Enough. Knowing that you've harassed Mom and Kim, how could you expect us to keep living together? And that baby in your belly, he's not mine. He's the child of the guy in those pictures, right? How much more do you want to make a fool out of me? I can't spend another second with you. Just divorce me and leave our house right now," Mark shouted, thrusting divorce papers at Mary. Mary had been adding heaps of salt to Mom's food, hoping she'd fall ill and have to be sent to a nursing home, letting Mary take control of the house and the inheritance. She also stole valuables from me, pawning them to finance her affair. If things had gone as Mary planned, she would have excluded me from the inheritance entirely. Did she think she could get Mark to work and earn money, while secretly grooming her lover's child to be the heir to this house, letting her live a life of luxury off the family fortune? How long did she think she could mock the feelings that we three shared as family? Did she really believe such shallow schemes would stay hidden forever? We all saw through Mary's intentions, Mom, Mark, and I had all been thinking about bringing up Mary's actions within the family. And now, here it all was, laid bare. So Mark and Mom, you both knew how terrible Mary was. I wish I'd prepared my own proof, just like you did. But Mary wasn't going to admit it so easily. Even under questioning, she refused to acknowledge the divorce with Mark or sign the papers. "You're going to abandon me and the baby. And where's the proof, the certainty that this child isn't yours?" Saying that, she clung tightly to her refusal to divorce. But Mark stood firm, claiming he hadn't touched Mary once since they'd married. In the end, they went to court, where a DNA test confirmed that the child was her lover's. After a long struggle, Mark received a substantial settlement from Mary through his lawyer. While Mark and Mary's divorce case dragged on, I prepared what I needed on my end. First, I had an invoice detailing the official amounts for the items Mary had sold off. I also added a small settlement fee on top of the compensation costs. A male friend of mine from school, now a lawyer, had agreed to help with my claim. "Kim, you've always been the soft-hearted type, family-oriented, but really, was there any need to keep quiet after losing so many valuables to her? Oh, you haven't changed a bit, always so direct." What was I supposed to do? It was Mark's marriage, not something I could just step in and break up. We were both single, and from then on, we started meeting regularly. Despite his personality, he became a different person when it came to work, proving to be incredibly capable. Thanks to him, I smoothly got through the claims process for compensation and settlement with Mary. In the end, although grudgingly, Mary paid both me and Mark our compensation, as well as the court settlement. It seems she finally left to live with her lover and a child. However, when we checked his mistress's house, no one was there. It seemed that she had hurriedly left somewhere, likely panicking after receiving a notice from a lawyer regarding a claim for damages over her infidelity. In any case, the compensation awarded in the divorce trial had now reached Mark's hands. Mary was left alone, burdened with debt and a child. Of course, Mark was under no obligation to pay child support, and the real father of the child was nowhere to be found. Eventually, it seemed her parents decided to take responsibility for raising the child. However, frustrated by her actions, and feeling that Mary wasn't fit to raise a child after all this, her parents vowed only to have minimal contact with her. They also made her promise to pay a monthly child support to them. burdened by her debts and the monthly payments to her parents. Mary came to our house just once. I'm sorry for everything I did, wanting the house and the inheritance. I'll change my ways. Could we possibly live together again? She apologized politely, but there was no way her words would move us. So now you're broke again, and back to use my family as a lifeline. If you hadn't done all those awful things, maybe we could have been happy together as a family. But you're the one who shattered that dream. Guess I was a fool to fall for you. Not that it matters much now. After Mark's blunt words and sending her away, Mary disappeared from our lives for good. After what happened with Mary, I began talking with Mark more often. We would share updates on our jobs, friends, and even relationships. Mark had been shy before, but this situation may have pushed him to open up to his family more. You know, at the time, all my coworkers were getting married, and I thought I wanted to settle down too. Then I met her, and I was drawn to the things she had that I didn't. But having similar values, that's really important, huh? Mark said with a slight wry smile. It's important not to rush marriage. Yay, but I'd like to get married sooner than later. Can't let it get too late, like you. Over 40, right? Excuse me, too late. Fine, I actually like being single. You rush into marriage just to end up divorcing again like you did. You've got a point there. But Kim, things seem good with that lawyer, right? Oh, maybe, maybe not. What? Why? Come on, tell me. It's been a rocky road. But now, being able to joke and talk openly with Mark like this, I feel genuinely satisfied. This time, I'll find the right person to finally put you and Mom at ease, he declared, once again setting his mind on finding a partner. And although I worry he might choose another reckless person like Mary, I watch over his next chapter with hope.
Hey, why are you acting like it's normal to show up? Auntie, I told you to skip my wedding. My niece sneered as she asked me not to attend her wedding. Ever since my brother passed away 11 years ago, I had raised her like she was my own daughter. But there was a reason she suddenly started hurting such harsh words at me. My name is Effie, and my brother, Jason, was 12 years older than me. Jason was a kind soul. When we were young, he'd hold my hand as we ran errands, help me practice riding my bicycle, and shower me with love. The year I entered middle school was also the year my beloved brother got married and moved out. I remember Jason and his wife's wedding being full of joy. I clapped so hard my palms ached. The following year, a baby girl was born to Jason and his wife, Mary. Being the youngest in the family, I was thrilled to have a little sister-like figure in my life. We named her Heidi, and I loved her as much as my brother had loved me. Even after Heidi was born, my brother and his wife continued to dote on me, and from middle school to high school, I frequently visited their home and spent time as a part of their family. While sitting at lunch one day, I thought to myself that I hadn't seen Heidi in a while. I was now 27 years old and working for a major fruit wholesale company, directly dealing with fruit farmers from various regions. I was not initially familiar with agriculture, but I learned a bit each day by listening to the voices of the producers, and I was now a leading staff among the employees, trusted with guiding my colleagues. One stormy day, I received sudden news that shocked me. That day, a typhoon was approaching, and we finished work a bit earlier than usual. Still, the weather outside was incredibly violent during my commute home, with gusts of wind so powerful they threatened to carry me away. It was on such a stormy day that my brother, under the orders of his boss, had been forced to go out on sales rounds. Jason was very earnest and hardworking. Even on that day, he was trying to make sales even in the adverse weather and didn't slack off. As he walked through the strong wind, a sign from a building fell and struck him directly. I heard about my brother's death, and I somehow managed to get my trembling legs to take me to the hospital. By the time I arrived, everyone was already there, and my parents were hunched over, crying silently. Seeing my parents crying and the painful sight of my brother, I couldn't help but shed tears, even though I still couldn't believe what had happened. Even though I understood the situation, the reality was too hard to accept. I sat next to my brother and cried. I noticed Mary and Heidi, Jason's wife and daughter, looking as if they were in a daze, not sobbing but simply staring blankly at the wall. Thinking it best to leave them be, I felt so sorry for them. From then on, we supported each other as a family even more than before. Mary, who is currently on leave from work, was a part-time worker within the scope of dependent support, and she will need a job in the future to sustain her life. My parents and I decided to support Heidi and Mary's future, including her re-employment, with all our might. About a year after the funeral, Mary, who had returned to part-time work, decided to move because the rent was becoming too much for her current income. She had received compensation and workers' compensation insurance from Jason's company due to the accident at work, and of course, we agreed with Mary's prudent decision. But on the day of the move, when we went to help, we found only Heidi crying in the somewhat tidied room. Heidi, holding a letter that said her mother couldn't raise her on her own, was only 16 years old. It seemed that Mary had called us to help with the move to ensure her daughter was taken care of after she left. Reading the letter, I felt a tightness in my chest, wondering if Mary had been so anxious that she wanted to run away after Jason's death. From the contents of the letter and what Heidi told me, it seemed that Mary believed it would be better for Heidi to be raised by our family than by her, who was economically unstable. Although it said she was thinking of Heidi first, what she did was equivalent to abandoning her high school daughter. Of course, I was angry at Mary, and we even went to search for her at her parents' house. However, the people who came out of the house were a family we didn't know, and we learned that not only Mary but also her parents had moved. We contacted Mary's relatives, but there was no family willing to live with Heidi, who was a high school student and had the prospect of significant expenses for college. As a result of our discussions, we decided to take care of Heidi in my house with the support of my parents. Despite the difficult times, Heidi smiled and said, "Effie, please take good care of me." And I hugged her tightly. 11 years have passed since then, and Heidi graduated from college and found a job at a local company. When she brought up a serious conversation, I felt the passage of time and nodded. "You're 27 now, after all." Seeing that, Heidi blushed a little and said, "Effie, I'm getting married." She met her boyfriend through a friend, and he was 1 year older than Heidi, and he seemed like a gentle and fine young man from the pictures. According to Heidi, he really cares about her, and although he is usually reliable, he can be a bit off at times, and she likes that part of him too. I was really happy and repeated, "Congratulations!" so many times that Heidi was amazed. The man seems to be quite busy, and I haven't met him face to face yet. Heidi would try to set up dates for me to see him, but it always falled on days that I was busy. But, in spite of her boyfriend's busy schedule, he actively participated in the wedding preparations, and Heidi seemed truly happy. When they shared with me that their ideal plan was beyond their budget, I remembered my brother's wonderful wedding. I wanted Heidi to have the most memorable wedding, one that would make her happy for the rest of her life. I provided financial support as much as possible and looked forward to a ceremony filled with Heidi's dreams. On the long-awaited wedding day, as it was time to leave, I urged Heidi to prepare and made my final check on my belongings. I couldn't afford to make a mistake at my daughter's grand event, so I checked multiple times before finally setting off. As I followed Heidi down the hallway, I was already filled with so many emotions. Just the sight of her in her wedding dress was enough to make me tear up. I thought that both the groom and his parents, as well as my late brother in heaven, might laugh at me if they saw me crying so much. Still, I found these moments of contemplation to be a joy. Just as we got to the front door, Heidi turned around abruptly. She smiled gently at me and said, "Don't come, Auntie." "Huh? I'm telling you to not attend my wedding, Aunt Effie." I stared at Heidi, unable to comprehend what she had just told me. She burst out laughing at my confusion. "Why do you think you have the right to attend my wedding? No matter how much you did for me to replace my mother, you're still my aunt, an outsider, right? There's no way I can introduce you as my mother to my guests." The words spoken by my niece, whom I had lived with and cherished for over 10 years, were shockingly hurtful. Indeed, I'm not her biological mother. No matter how much time has passed, Heidi never called me her mom. The reality that to Heidi, her only mother was Mary, finally hit me again. I was left speechless by Heidi's words, which she uttered with a smile. There was a moment when I thought, despite having raised her this far, but I realized it was a one-sided and arrogant sentiment. It is indeed regrettable that I cannot witness my daughter's grand event, but if this is for Heidi's happiness, I will do as she says. Suppressing my feelings, I told her that I understood, and gave her my blessings and decided to absent myself from the wedding. Several hours later, Heidi returned home while I was still recovering from the shock. She came into the living room laughing cheerfully, and to my surprise, behind her was Mary, who had disappeared 11 years ago. "Long time no see. Effie, you've aged a lot." Mary, who made quite a light-hearted entrance, extended her hand towards me the moment she saw my speechless face. "I'm sure you know that my daughter got married. Give us a gift, $10,000 will do. You'll be down to offer Heidi that amount, right, Auntie Effie?" Her red lipstick-clad mouth curled into a smirk. Heidi, standing next to Mary, echoed her mother's words with a similar smile. As they urged me to cough up the money quickly, the two started revealing a shocking truth. In fact, Mary's disappearance was a scheme to freely spend the insurance money and the funds from my brother's company. Mary, who had been working part-time and left the household finances to my brother, seemed to have completely changed after suddenly coming into a lot of money. Although she had never been poor, she became stingy about spending the money she had acquired, even on her daughter, once she realized that she could control everything. Her greed led her to use me, a single woman with a stable life, to raise Heidi, so she could save on major expenses like college tuition. And terrifyingly, this all was a farce that Heidi was aware of. Only our family thought Mary had disappeared. She and Heidi were secretly contacting each other on their phones to prevent us from finding out, and they eventually started meeting once a month. When Heidi became a college student, her spending increased dramatically, and I heard she had started a part-time job, but in reality, she was receiving pocket money from Mary and hanging out. For Heidi, who was in her partying phase, Mary, who gave her money and let her do as she pleased every month, was undeniably the best mother. That's why, Heidi coldly laughed, she deliberately refused to call me mom, knowing how much I loved her as my daughter. After Mary finished revealing the truth about her disappearance, she laughed mockingly and said, "Oh? Did you perhaps use up all your savings and can't afford a gift anymore? But well, it was a more lavish ceremony than expected, so I'm proud as a mother who supported her financially for her wedding. Right, Auntie?" "Hee hee, Mom, you're so mean. From now on, you should save for yourself. I absolutely won't take care of you after your retirement. It was fun being your pretend daughter, but bye-bye now." The two of them laughed heartily, stating that they would take the wedding expenses as a combination of a wedding gift and severance payment. They declared to cut off ties with me and left the house, claiming to attend their after-party and dinner with friends. Left behind, I was too overwhelmed by shock to comprehend the events of the past 11 years. About 30 minutes later, my parents arrived. They had been shocked at the wedding when Mary appeared as Heidi's mother, but didn't want to ruin their granddaughter's big day, so they stayed put until the ceremony ended. Afterwards, they had been looking for Mary. Unable to find her and unable to reach me, they decided to check on me at home. Seeing my parents, I broke down in tears. When I tearfully confessed everything about Heidi and Mary's scheme, my parents were furious. However, even if my parents wanted to talk directly, it seemed that Heidi had already switched off her phone, and we couldn't reach her. We could have tried to locate Heidi through Jason's family. But we had raised Heidi because we wanted to. Confronting them wouldn't make us feel better, because we never expected anything in return. We could have hired a lawyer to claim back my money, but I just didn't have the courage to sue my own daughter, whom I had cherished and raised for over 10 years. After discussing the situation, we decided to let it go, as they wished. We decided to sever our ties and bury everything in the past. Once free from the situation, I took the bold step of resigning from the company I had been working for and started my own fruit wine manufacturing business. I used domestically produced fruit that couldn't be sold due to irregular shapes, or fruits that were partially damaged due to weather conditions, to develop and produce my products. My new venture, which I started with the idea of reducing fruit waste while still working at my previous company, gradually gained support from not only farmers but also various supporters due to the growing concern about food waste. Though it was challenging as I embarked on this new journey, connections I made during my corporate career helped me immensely, and I made steady progress. The business that initially ran at a loss slowly started to increase its sales over 3 to 5 years, and consistent growth made it a company to watch in the industry. One day, Heidi suddenly visited my office. She was already crying when she arrived and ran towards me as soon as she spotted me. Surprised, but not wanting to cause a scene, I took her into the reception room.
Effie, I'm really sorry for everything. I've reflected on my actions, and I need your help. I'm still like a daughter to you, right? After all, we lived together for such a long time. I'm really in trouble. Effie, please help me financially.
A woman, now well over 30, sobbed like a toddler. A receptionist, who Heidi seemed to have pushed past, arrived out of breath with several other staff members, all trying to drag Heidi out of the office. Watching this scene, I felt disheartened. She was, after all, after my money. According to Heidi, by the time Mary had appeared before me, she had almost exhausted all the money she had. Unaware of this, newlyweds Heidi and Jason expected support from Mary and willingly invited her to live with them. Initially, their life together seemed to go well, but everything changed when they built a new house. Heidi's husband took out a hefty loan to build a house with unique architectural features, expecting his mother-in-law to pay for it. Heidi wanted a kitchen with the latest equipment, and Mary, assuming her sister-in-law was well off, chose the best from wallpapers to lighting for her room. Their loan turned out to be a heavy burden as everyone was relying on someone else's money. To make matters worse, their lifestyle was beyond their means, and Mary's money was already depleted. Even so, Mary, claiming to have given Heidi enough pocket money, started asking for money and never worked. This drove Jason to gambling out of stress from his mother-in-law's outrageous behavior. Unbeknownst to Heidi and Mary, Heidi's husband even accrued debt under their names, leaving their household finances in shambles, regardless of how much Heidi worked.
We're now trying to sell the house as his parents suggested, but we can't find any buyers. Mom gets fired every time she tries to work, and both my husband and I are exhausted from working overtime every day. You're the only one I can rely on, Effie. If I'm not happy, Dad wouldn't be able to rest in peace either,
right? Heidi, desperately appealing to me, reached her hand out while being escorted by my staff, smearing her face with tears and snot as she asked for money. I was slightly relieved to find that my heart was unmoved by this spectacle. The matter of this mother and daughter had firmly become a thing of the past in my mind. Finally, I broke my silence.
Do you have an appointment, ma'am? Our company is not a financial institution, so we cannot lend money to strangers. If you're in trouble, please consult a bank or consumer finance company.
Stunned, Heidi was lost for words when I turned back her own phrase, stranger, that one had pushed me to the abyss of despair. Maybe she thought that if she cried and pleaded, she would get help. I followed my staff and led Heidi to the company's entrance. When she still wouldn't budge, I gently pushed her shoulder, guiding her a step outside the entrance. Realizing that I was never going to be her ally, for the first time, Heidi called me Mom.
I don't have a daughter, I said.
My words must have struck her hard as she turned white and ran away. After that incident, I started receiving spam texts from Heidi and Mary, which all centered around the dire financial situation. I ignored them all, but they persistently requested money or a loan. Seeing this, it's clear that they're struggling under a crushing debt. It would be a nuisance if they call my company's front desk, even if I block their calls. So, I'm receiving bunch of texts, but I have no intention of ever replying. If they ever send something to my company, I might sue them for business obstruction. Finally recovering, I've decided to move abroad to expand my business and study to make better wines. It seems I won't have to face those two for a while, and with anticipation for my new environment, I'm dedicating myself to work every day.